Join me in creating a nice rendition of right angle weave with a little bit of a twist. If you need any supplies, remember you can look below the video in the description to shop with us online. So to get started, I have 3mm Potomac Crystal Rounds in the light sapphire, as well as 3mm pearls in the cream shiny, and some 15/0s in crystal Labrador fool. I have a 0.006 wildfire thread in the beige color on a size 10 needle, and I've put a stop bead on about 10 to 12 inches from the end. That way I'll have a chance to add my beautiful clasp, Garten clasp, after I start making this design. To begin the design, we are going to begin very, very simply. I have my one blue crystal on, and then I'm going to put on 1 and 2 of my glass pearls. Then I'm going to put on another one of my crystals, and then 2 more pearls. We're doing right angle weave, and you may not even realize that we're doing right angle weave because it doesn't look like a square. It's going to look like a rectangle because we're making our top and our bottom of our right angle weave box bigger, or longer rather, than the sides. So I have my beads on here. Again, crystal, 2 pearls, crystal, 2 pearls. Take your thread and needle back through your crystal and out before the second pearl. So back through the crystal and the pearl, starting at the stop bead, and then bring your thread and needle out. That gets you to see just that little pretty round unit. From here, pick up one of your 15/0s and sew through the next pearl. And that 15/0 will just kind of sit up, just accenting right between. Go ahead and sew down through the next crystal, out through the next pearl. And when you come out the next pearl, that's when you're going to go ahead and once again add a 15/0 seed bead. Sew through the pearl again, as well as the crystal, and we want to make it out so we're coming out through that right hand crystal. So I'm just kind of spinning it around here, sewing back through. When you sew back through the project and you're kind of reinforcing it, getting back to where you need to be, do not sew through that seed bead. The reason is that we want that seed bead to sit up between the 2 beads rather than sitting down. So we want it to sit at that point. That is our constant unit that we do when we have our pearls. Now to do our crystals, we're going to add 2 crystals for the bottom, 1 crystal for the right side of our little rectangle box here, and then 2 crystals for the top. Taking these 5 crystals that we just put on our thread and needle, I want you coming out the bottom of your crystal to sew into the top of the crystal that your thread is currently coming out of. Once you bring that down, you can see that that also goes into a nice little round unit. To increase and make it into our little diamond shape, I want you to sew through the next crystal in line. So you're coming out, just like we did with the pearls, between the 2 beads that sit on the top or the bottom. This time we're going to add another crystal, a 15/0, and then we're going to sew back down through that crystal that we just added, and then into the second bead along that grouping. And see how that just creates that little point there, or the little top. So then through the crystal that's on the right hand side, and we're going to sew up through the first crystal that's on the top. So I'm just circling around my right angle unit. Coming out that first crystal there on the top, add 1 more crystal, 1 more 15/0 seed bead. So back through the crystal, and then again we're going to circle back around, so we're coming out through the right hand side. So I'm going through the second crystal that was on the top, as well as the crystal that our thread first came out of. Making sure that sits at just a nice little point there. And then again, I'm taking my thread and needle back, so I'm coming out the right hand side of my little piece that I did here. Ignore the crystal that you added, just like we ignored the seed bead between the pearls. We sew through those bottom 2 crystals and then out through the crystal on the right hand side. And that is our first little section. We're going to continue, and I'm going to just be repeating. So here I am with my next right angle unit. I need to add my 2 pearls to sit at the top, a crystal to sit on the right-hand side, and then 2 more pearls to sit on the bottom. And this really is a return back to basics with just a little twist of adding that bead at the top. Coming out the top of that far left bead now, we're going to go into the bottom of that same bead. That once again brings us around into the circle. Sew through the first pearl and exit. Pull nice and tight, add your 15, sew through the second pearl. And that 15 again is just used there to decorate a little bit of the top of the pearl. You can omit that if you don't want to see the silver between the pearl. Sewing down again, down between the 2 pearls that are at the bottom, adding a silver and sewing through the second pearl. Just like the crystals, once you're going back around to get to the far right side, which you always need to do, you're going to sew through your crystal and then through your beads. Whether or not your needle's at the top or the bottom, you're going to sew straight through this set of 2. So again, if it wants to come out the seed bead, take that out, just through the pearls, let the seed beads, or the top crystal in the case of the crystals, hang out by itself. Go through the second pearl, and then once again exiting through that right side. Starting over yet again, and then I'm just going to put you guys on autopilot. You can slow this down if you want to, as well as watch it constantly on just kind of taking a step back. So I won't bore you by watching me for an endless amount of time. 5 more crystals go on. Coming out the bottom of the crystal there that was on the right-hand side, I'm going to go into the top of that same crystal. Now it's the left-hand side of my new little box here. I'm going to sew through the first crystal on the bottom, since that's where my thread is coming out. Add a crystal, add a 15. We're using the 15-0 as an anchor to hold that crystal in place. We're going to add the crystal and then sew through the second bead along the bottom. Give a nice tight pull. Sew through the bead that sits on the right-hand side, and then still going around in a circle, sew through the first bead that sits at the top. Once you're through there, repeat those little tips by adding the crystal, the 15-0, sewing back through the crystal, and then into the second crystal that sits to the top. And that puts that point in there. Once again, I need to get back over to the right-hand side of the project so I can keep expanding and building on. So I'm going to sew down through the crystal, over through the bottom 2 crystals, ignoring the crystal that sits at that peak or that point, and then going the whole way over to exit through that right-hand crystal. You can see such a pretty little design, and we're just going to keep repeating over and over till you get the length of your wrist that you need. So I'm going to go through and make a bunch of my little diamonds here for the Vera bracelet, and then we'll get ready to add our beautiful clasp garden clasp to make it really pop. Once you have that repetition done, it is time to put on your clasp. So here I have a total of 10 of my little diamonds on the Vera bracelet, and I'm using a clasp garden push clasp here. You can see this is going to be about 6 3/4 to 7 inches. So if you want it a little bit bigger, you may have 11 of the diamonds. But I've already put the clasp on the end, and I've come back and I'm going to repeat the exact same thing on the starter side. So I've taken off my stop bead and I have put a needle on this side of the thread. And what I'm going to do is use a wire guard. So I'm coming out my first bead there, or my last bead if you're on the other side, and you're going to add a 15-0 seed bead and then your wire guard. Come back down through the other side of the wire guard, add your clasp. So I added the loop for the ball the last time, now I'm adding the little tongue for it. I'm going to add a 15 after going down the other side of the wire guard, and come into the opposite side of the crystal. So my thread was originally coming out of the bottom. After completing this, I'm going into the top. You can see how that just finishes it off so nicely, circles it around. And then I'm going to reinforce that, going through the 15, going around that horseshoe, through the clasp so the thread sits in the little horseshoe shape of the wire guard, down the wire guard. After coming out the wire guard there, I want to make sure I'm going through my 15-0 right after, and then also through my crystal. Then what I'm going to do is just sew back into my project a little bit and tie off my thread. So I'm going through the pearl right there at the end, skipping over that 15, going through the pearl here. And then once I come out of the pearl, the nice thing with this beige thread is it really is a close color match to the pearl. I'm going to go through that little circle loop here, which is going to go underneath the bridge thread between the pearl and the crystal here. I'm going to sew through that loop once, through that loop 2 times, making sure that my thread stays over there between the crystal and the pearl. Give a nice tight pull, nice tight yank, so I get that knot nice and tight. And then I'm going to sew through the crystal and pull that knot in towards the crystal. Take your thread zap or your thread burner, heat it up a tiny bit, let go, burn that thread edge down, and then burn that down towards the project. And that will finish off the beautiful Vera bracelet, which I think is really, really pretty. Also, if you have somebody that it's the wedding season right now, you can look, this would be a great something blue sort of design, especially with that beautiful little crystal clasp here and creating those nice little diamonds. Thanks so much for joining me for this project. Remember, there are many more, so stay tuned. Also, if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. Remember, if you do need any materials, check out the links below in the description to shop with us online. I can't wait to see all of your creations in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. You can change up the sizes too, do it with 4mm as well as 11 seed beads, and show all the different colors and size combinations that you are going to make. Remember, you can also comment below and let us know that too. Stay tuned for the next video, and happy beading, everyone.